Hey friends, Patrick here. How you doing today? I thought I would go live a little earlier today because I have a friend dropping by this afternoon to help with some minor repair work. I wanted to follow up. Yesterday I was talking about the book COVID-19, The Great Reset by Schwab and the gentleman from France. And at that time I had only read up to page 17, so it started off as an insightful commentary on current world events, and I thought it was very interesting. But since then, I've read down now. I've reached page 31. That was about as much as I could take for now because it's pretty disheartening. What starts off as insightful commentary quickly switches to really presumptuous, smug explanation for the whole pandemic, and I'm reminded that this was written in early 2020. It doesn't give exact date, but from the footnotes, I'm thinking it's probably around a little after May of 2020 when this was published. And so they talk about the pandemic, and they refer to it as a white swan event. Now, we know a black swan event is something that's unpredictable, but they call it a white swan event because the members of the World Economic Forum were so intelligent, they knew this was going to happen ahead of time. And so it comes off as very smug, very pompous, that they know all these things ahead of time, and so they're able to explain them. And they go on to give all these things that are going to happen. The thing that they weren't counting on was the resiliency of the economy, in particular the jobs. They obviously weren't counting on the number of people who are able to work remotely and still keep the economy going, keep everything functioning. They were expecting a total collapse. On page 24, I like to write notes as I'm going through reading so that I'll remember what I've read. On page 17, they talk about the White Swan event. Page 24, they mention despite the rise of anti-vaxxers, they're expecting a collapse in investment. And, they're talking about things. There's a lot of direct quotes from this book that I wouldn't be able to mention or even publish without getting censored. So it's interesting because I have to tiptoe around what's actually being said in this book. And then there's switching towards saying, well, some of the benefits of what's going to happen with this whole pandemic is, for example, less eating of meat and fewer flights. Imagine. They're saying, oh, this is going to have the benefit. And this is very, very interesting. It goes to page 29. And so I quoted it so I wouldn't forget. They're saying here, by triggering a period of enforced degrowth, they're saying this is a benefit of the pandemic, right? The pandemic has spurred renewed interest in this movement, this degrowth movement that wants to reverse the pace of economic growth, leading more than 1,100 experts from around the world to release a manifesto in May of 2020, putting forward a degrowth strategy to tackle the economic and human crisis caused by COVID-19. Their open letter calls for the adoption of a democratically planned yet adaptive, sustainable, and equitable downscaling of the economy, leading to a future where we can live better with less. So if you look at Agenda 2030, they have all these noble goals where they say we're going to eliminate poverty. Well, what their goal is this degrowth strategy. They want to decimate the economy, and this is what their original plan was, by forcing, they used ridiculous numbers of prevented deaths through lockdown. They said by locking down people and locking down the economy, we're going to save millions and millions and millions of lives. And in hindsight, we can look back on that and say, well, that didn't really get proven out in the global situation, did it? When we saw some countries that didn't have lockdown and they fared pretty good. Again, I have to be very careful even saying that, because that could get me censored. But I mean, I'm going through this book and I'm like, man, this whole thing, they're tipping their hand. They're spilling the beans. They're saying, we planned this all out. We're so smart that this was not COVID-19 was not a black swan event. And they admit it. They say this was a white swan event because we knew it was going to happen. And we're so smart. We planned all these things to degrowth the economy and to bring everybody down to the same level of whatever you want to call it. They wanted to decimate the economy, right? An equitable downscaling of the economy, leading to a future where we can live better with less. We, meaning the peasantry, not the elites, right? They say we. No, it's not we. It's us, right? And they didn't count on how resilient the economy was, and so people were able to work from home. And so they didn't see that. They thought that we would be in economic collapse already. And so the economic collapse would prevent people from flying and prevent people from eating meat. And so they say this is the only way that we can reduce the carbon footprint and save the planet. It all comes back to the atheistic agenda of the only way we can save the planet is by decimating the economy, making everybody poor so that they're not producing carbon by not driving their cars anywhere and by not flying anywhere. And obviously we can see that they're still trying to do that through gasoline and restricting travel. Now, the result, I've only read to page 31 so far, but I don't know if I'm going to reach page 100 at this rate. What I realize from reading this now is the futility of the political solution. We've been so interested in trying to find a political solution. Well, from reading this, it appears that the political environment that makes up the World Economic Forum, NATO, the global political landscape of which we are a part of now has already been determined. So if there was a World War III, guess what? We lost. We're not in control. We're just a nation state now. So to try and get involved in politics now, to try and help fix living under a communist leader like Trudeau, for example, it's not going to work, because it's like saying, well, I want to achieve world peace, so I'm going to join the military. It's really opening my eyes to what they're telling me here in this book. I'm like, man, oh man, this is sad, right? The World War III has already occurred and we lost. China won, right? We're moving into global, the capitalistic version of modern communism, they call it, right? China uses a form of communism, a form of totalitarian control, but they also use the forces of capitalism in allowing free market activity without state intervention. So this in this new modern form of communism, the state isn't trying to control all the industry. They're letting industry use the principles of capitalism to prosper. Of course, they're supporting industry, right? They're allowing Tesla to come in and build factories. They're building their own factories. They're allowing themselves to have a high carbon footprint while telling the rest of the world they have to reduce their carbon footprint, right? And so China has won. Okay, so I think that's something that we need to be aware of. They pull all the strings. They control all the political leaders across the world, and I think that's pretty easy to see. So from this, it's telling us, they're admitting it, that this was all planned. They all knew what was going to happen. It was going to cause an economic collapse. And now what's the next white swan event? Because the economic collapse didn't happen, because people are still driving their cars and they're still flying around, they're telling us that there's going to be more white swan events. Now, not in this book, COVID-19, The Great Reset, but they're telling us that through the media, right? They're telling us that because of Russia-Ukraine conflict, there's going to be rising gas prices and food shortages. So it's the same story over again. And they're also telling us that Bill Gates is coming out and saying, oh, well, there's going to be another pandemic and it's going to be even worse than this one. It's even going to be more deadly. So because it didn't work with the COVID-19 Great Reset, they're going to reset it a different way. They are determined to bring everybody down to a level of peasantry so that you cannot fly, so that you cannot afford gasoline, and so that the carbon footprint of the global population is reduced to the point where they think they're able to save the planet. This is their reasoning behind it, and they don't hide it. They're telling us in the book that this is their plan. And so it's really an eye-opening. I put the link to it in my video yesterday, and now I'm depressed that I did, because this is a very depressing book, to be honest with you. In any event, I wanted to talk a little bit about the narrow way, because people spoke to me saying, oh, you're saying that other religions can go to heaven, but only Christians can go to heaven. Only if you believe in Jesus. That's the only way. One mediator between God and man. Okay, all right. I want to address that scripture, right? That says, enter through the narrow gate. That's from Matthew chapter 7. Narrow is the way that leads to destruction, that leads to life, and few are those that find it. Yes, that's verse 14. I recognize that. And people will say that and say, oh, it's only through this, only Christians get to go to heaven. So what you're saying is wrong. You're saying that everybody can go to heaven. Well, if you look at all of Matthew chapter 7, it reinforces what I was trying to say. Yes, the way is narrow. It's narrow for everybody to find life, the path that leads to life. Everybody in every religion. Did you know that most Muslim people that I know are nominal? The difference between nominal and fundamentalism, right? Nominal is typical Catholic religion. Nominal religion means they just give it lip service. So a typical nominal Catholic is someone that goes to church on Christmas and Easter, and the rest of the year they're just doing their thing. They're like, yeah, I'm Catholic because I was born Catholic. This is what they say. Similar with a lot of people that are Muslim. They say, well, Pat, you know what? The only reason why I'm Muslim is because I was born Muslim. I go to mosque once on a blue moon, and I basically just do my thing. So keep that in mind. Every religion, the path is narrow that leads to life. So if you look at all of Matthew chapter 7, look how it goes. It says, don't judge so you won't be judged. That's how it starts. Right? By whatever standard you use, it's going to be used against you. This is a universal principle. This is not saying, oh, you have to follow this specific denomination. You have to read this specific prayer. It doesn't say that. It says, no, don't judge and you won't be judged. That's a universal principle that applies to almost all religions, right? Ask and it'll be given to you, right? The very verse that's right before that narrow gate verse is this one. It says, in everything, therefore, treat people the same way you want them to treat you. For this is the law and the prophets. I'm reading from the New American Standard Version, by the way. I like that version. But in everything, therefore, it says, treat people the same way you want them to treat you. Again, the golden rule. For this is the law and the prophets. What's that saying? The law covers all the Old Testament scriptures, and the prophets would cover all the New Testament scriptures, and it would cover the Quran, which was written much, much later. Because the Quran is about a prophet, the messenger, a prophet, right? And so this summarizes the entire directive of ancient scripture. And that is, in everything, treat people the same way you want them to treat you, right? The golden rule. Or the prophets can also apply to other religions that have prophet figures, Buddha, for example, the Dalai Lama, for example. And then it goes on, it says, enter in the narrow gate, right? It's hard to find. Broad is the way that leads to destruction. There's many that go through it. We see that all the time. We see people that end up getting destroyed because it's an easy path to follow. Look at people that are on drugs or on fentanyl or finding different ways to kill themselves. It's a broad way that leads to death and destruction. And again, we don't know the state of those souls when they reach God. Perhaps they're comforted and have a place in heaven that God provides for them somehow. And then the next verse after says, beware of false prophets, right? And then it becomes even more specific. It says, not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, right? But the one who does the will of my Father. Again, Christ points towards the Father, the Almighty, the All-Powerful, the God of all creation, the God who created everything, the God of the Jews, the God of the Muslims, the God of the Christians, the God of all tribes and populations of the earth. This is who Christ says to acknowledge and to reconcile with. And he warns, if you don't reconcile with God, then he'll say, I won't know you. Get out of here. You're not going to share in my future in heaven. And so he says, if you hear these words and you act on them, you're building a house on a foundation, right? And then he goes through and he talks about, and then it says, when he finished these words, the crowd were amazed at his teaching because he taught them as one who had authority and not as one of their scribes. This is the reason I put my trust and hope in Jesus Christ, is because I have never read words like his words. His words, he said, they are spirit and they are life. He described his own words that way. And this is what allowed me to put my trust in him. So when I look at the world today and what's going on, and I see all these planned events that they're planning and saying, this is what's going to happen, and this is how we're going to deal with the global population control, and this is going to allow us to do this, problem, reaction, solution, all that kind of stuff, and the manipulation that goes on. It really makes me want to step back and say, hey, I want to get off the carousel, right? I don't want to play this game anymore. I want to take my marbles and go home, because this is no fun. They're pulling all the strings. They think that they're so smart that they can plan out these pandemics ahead of time and know exactly how things are going to turn out. Of course, they make mistakes. They came out with all these details, and some of the details are already incorrect. And so they've tipped their hand, and they've said, we are so smart, we're able to do this, but they've revealed their own ignorance. They've revealed their own foolishness, that they haven't been able to achieve what they wanted to achieve. They haven't been able to collapse the economy. People were more resilient than they thought they would be. And so they're planning additional waves and additional white swan events, such as Russia, Ukraine. They just, they can pick anything. It can be a comet coming to Earth. It can be an alien invasion. It can be another global skirmish or a global war that they control and they manipulate. And when I say they, I do refer to mostly the World Economic Forum and what they even admit they call Bretton Woods organizations that were formed in 1943, the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, that were formed after World War II to rebuild the economy. Well, to control the economy really is what they refer to as these Bretton Woods organizations. And so these global organizations feel that they are in control and they dictate how the peasantry is going to live. And they're saying, we're going to prevent you from flying. We're going to quadruple or tenfold increase the price of gasoline, so you won't be able to afford to drive unless it's some zero carbon footprint vehicle, or electric vehicle perhaps. And perhaps their motives are not all evil. Perhaps their motives do have some semblance of charity within them. I wouldn't count on it, but perhaps they do have these altruistic goals of preventing extreme poverty. Their strategy to eliminate poverty is to bring everybody, it's not to rise everybody up in third world countries. No, it's to bring everybody down to a subsistence level so that everybody is not going to starve, but they're not going to be eating steak, guaranteed, right? They want to bring everybody down to a controllable level of poverty with them dictating policy and controlling so on and so forth, as we can imagine. And so to see some of these grassroots political parties in Canada that are fighting back against globalism, it's encouraging, absolutely. But any political party that gains any type of foothold or gets any type of influence, it's going to come up against organizations that have been in place since World War II and highly educated people with connections to power and military power and economic power that is far beyond the scope of what we may hope to achieve. I hate to sound fatalistic or say that it's futile, but I think the best method to survivability is through independent survivability, right? Get off the grid, grow your own food. All these preppers that have been prepping for years and years that I used to laugh at, they probably have not a bad idea, and that is kind of maybe a movement towards self-sustainability rather than depending upon the global economy for survival. Because the global economy for survival, they're telling us that they're going to tear that down. They're saying we're just going to wreck everything. We're going to wreck the economy. We're going to put everybody out of work so that they can't fly, so they can't eat meat anymore, and so that everybody is on the same playing field, and then we're going to be happy. At least that's what I've read so far. I'm only on page 31, so it's 110 pages. I got to torture myself with another 70 pages of reading, which I'm not looking forward to. I'd much rather spend time reading the book of Revelation or ancient scriptures. I get a lot more out of that. But thank you very much for watching. I pray that you have a blessed day. I'm sorry I gave you the link to that book because it's very depressing. I don't recommend reading it unless you, well, I do recommend reading it, but it's not going to inspire you. I can tell you that. It's not a feel-good book. It is what it is. So thank you very much for watching. I wish I had something more inspiring, but maybe I'll have something more inspiring tomorrow. I did have something. I'll leave you with this. Right before I went to make this video, a deer just walked across right outside my window. And I was like, wow, that is so cool. I mean, usually they're very spooky and they hide a lot. They come out at night or something. I don't know. But he just moseyed right by. And I thought, that's kind of cool. I like that. So I can leave on a positive note. Thank you so much for watching. God bless you. I love you. I hope you have a wonderful day. Take care now. Bye-bye.